Thank you for having me. This isn't great news because, again, with low spirits and low morale on the Afghan army and the defense forces, this is just going to block a certain pathway that they had at the back of their minds. In other words, it's actually psychologically useful as well when you realize that the only option is to fight. It will negate the Taliban propaganda that they are projecting onto the Afghan forces, telling them that there was an easy way out, that was surrendering. But once these people realize that their way out is blocked, they might even fight more aggressively.
Yeah.
Look, something that guerrilla fighters enjoy is mobility, right? So the fact that their whole tactic revolves around hit and run, that's something the Taliban have been giving up because it's human instinct. When you're given territory, you tend to defend it. And the Afghan forces have been limiting their own casualties and civilian casualties by giving up, apparently tactically retreating from those areas, then bombing it in return and planning offensives. Those are taking a toll on the Taliban. The idea is that media only gets to hear about the casualties being suffered on the government's end, but this is taking its toll on the Taliban movement as well. And it's quite impossible to sustain this for too long. A camp says that these are basically modernized Taliban, and these are people who have lived abroad, their children have studied abroad, and they would be reformed, they would be different. But what we're seeing on the ground, the majority of the movement and the thinking seems to be quite similar. We've seen flogging of women around the country. We've seen extreme versions of Islam being implemented in territories that are held by the Taliban. Again, there is a question of the legacy of the United States and if there were any gains with regards to modernity or rights in the country. Most of it would be lost because, again, there was talk about integrating the Taliban fighters within the Afghan community, but I guess it would be the Afghan community who would have to integrate into the lifestyle that the Taliban want to impose on the country. We're trying to be hopeful. We're trying to imagine that the Taliban have it within them to accept constructive criticism and generally impartial analysis, because most of those who are on the media and analyze the situation tend to be equally critical of the government as well as of the Taliban. There have been instances where people have been taken out for being outspoken. The Taliban have denied those claims of these attacks, but it does create this sense of fear and the sense of not being able to speak out. And I guess there's a saying that says, if you want to find out who controls you, find out who you cannot criticize. So it is a tricky situation to be in. And again, predicting the future is no absolute science, but I don't see that happening in the short term. Again, for the United States, this would be political suicide for the current administration to ever think about reversing their decision. They will try to support whatever side they deem to be right and correct. But I fear that it's just another return to the 80s when the international community just turns its back on Afghanistan, and only years later when it all implodes is when they come back. Not that the Afghans want foreign presence here, but there could have been a more responsible withdrawal. There could have been more responsibility shown towards the Afghan people and the community. They've left us in a rut, and there should have been a plan, a roadmap for the peace, and it was the absence of that plan that led us to where we are.